I'm here to provide some additional research, guys. And according to my research, I think the two things that no one is talking about regarding Chris Paddack is the... Come on, guys. You know I can't give you the answer that quick. You gotta watch the rest of the video to get my take. But while you're here, this is a reminder to click the link in the description. It's probably going to be pinned in the comments, or you could just watch my last video. But I'm doing this fundraiser where you could buy this shirt that's somewhere on the screen right now, and 100% of the profits will go towards helping the homeless. We really want to do some change in the world, so please go buy a shirt and support the cause. Alright, back to the video. Alright, so Chris Paddack said this last week.
Never been like a big analytical guy. Or fastball, like I said, was a big problem for me last season. You know, I had more horizontal break than I've ever had.
Now, it wasn't that long ago that Chris Paddack was coming off a great rookie season and was named the opening day starter for the San Diego Padres. But anyone who's followed the Padres or followed baseball could tell you that Paddack had a terrible 2020 season. The question is, how could such a brilliant, bright, young pitcher in 2019 do a 180 and have such a terrible, trash season in 2020? Now, if you look at Paddack's interview, he seems to talk about his fastball. He talks about how it was moving differently in 2020 compared to 2019. And yeah, the blame seems to be placed on the fastball. Now, in case you don't have the background knowledge of Chris Paddack, this is a huge problem for a pitcher like him. Because he's not like Yu Darvish where he has like 10 or 12 pitches that he can turn to. This dude is primarily a fastball changeup pitcher. But he's got no tertiary pitch. And so if he's primarily throwing a fastball changeup, if you have no fastball, the changeup doesn't really matter. So the question we should be asking then is Paddack correct? Was his fastball that much worse in 2020 than in 2019? The short answer is yes. His fastball was atrocious. And again, my best example, I've said this for I don't know how many times in how many different videos. But if you want to see just how ineffective Chris Paddack's fastball was, the best example is turn to his one playoff start against the St. Louis Cardinals. And I'll probably have it playing on the background here. But every single ball was just a shot. So I don't think it's debatable that his fastball was definitely worse in 2020. But the question is, why was it worse then? Why was his fastball so much worse in 2020 than in 2019? Again, if we look back at what Paddack said, the answer he seems to imply is that it moved different. It moved more like a two-seam fastball, meaning it moved more horizontally and less vertically. Now, is that correct? Well, the answer again is yes. When you compare his 2019 season to his 2020 season, his fastball moves way more horizontally in 2020, and his fastball moves less vertically in 2020 as well. And if you watch this clip from 2019 and this clip from 2020, you can kind of see that the 2020 fastball cuts more than the 2019 fastball. But in case that's not clear, let's overlay them on top of each other. Also, guys, I want to say, this is my first time doing an overlay like this, and isn't this kind of dope? I don't know. Every time I learn a new editing technique, I just feel very accomplished, even though it's probably not all too good. But I think it was pretty dope to see an overlay like this and say that I was able to create something like this. But anyways, back to the point. I think Paddack is right in his statement when he says that his fastball moved differently in 2020. But I don't think that fully explains Chris Paddack's struggles as a pitcher. You see, I think there are two things that no one is talking about. And that's why you guys are here, right? I don't want to give you what the rest of the mainstream media is hyping. If you want to hear about analysts overplay just how much his fastball changed in 2020, you could just go to, I don't know, MLB Network for that. I think there was a segment on that the other day, actually. You see, I'm here to provide a different perspective. I'm here to provide some additional research, guys. And according to my research, I think the two things that no one is talking about regarding Chris Paddack is the overhype of his 2019 season and his problems with his changeup. Before you guys start to crucify me, let me explain with some numbers. In 2019, we'll just use some basic statistics. Chris Paddack put up a 3.33 ERA and a .98 WHIP. That's pretty solid, but that doesn't tell the whole truth. Against teams with a top 50% offense, so in the top half of the league, Chris Paddack had an ERA of 4.22 and a whip of 1.13. Now clearly that shows that Chris Paddack struggles against better teams, better offenses. So this should immediately be a red flag to those who might be thinking about putting Chris Paddack in a number 1 or number 2 starter role. Like if he's having a 4.22 ERA against the top 15 offenses in the league, I don't think he should even be in the conversation as a number 1 or number 2 starter. But these are just the basic numbers. Let's try to go a little deeper. You guys want to talk about his fastball? We could talk about his fastball. One thing we can do is take his fastball usage and look at where in the zone he threw his fastball in 2019. And if we do that, we get a zone that looks like this. If we compare that to 2020, we get a zone that looks like this. And when we look at both of these together, I guess the conclusion that we get to is they're roughly the same. Sure, the numbers are slightly different, but for the most part, he throws his fastball in the top or middle part of the zone, and he rarely throws it low in the zone. Now, because both of these zones look pretty similar, what we can conclude is that his strategy was still the same. From 2019 to 2020, he still chose to elevate his fastball. So it wasn't a shift in strategy that made his fastball all that different in 2020. Now let's compare how these batters hit fastballs in these separate zones. Would you look at that? It just seems like they hit the ball better in basically every zone in 2020. So it's not a change in strategy that's affecting him, but it's something else going on with his fastball. And that's why people think that his fastball's difference in movement is the main reason why he struggled in 2020. But that's not the only issue, guys, remember. Let's look at a span of 4 starts he had between August 4th, 2019 and August 23rd, 2019. Remember, this is a rookie season, the one everyone loves to hype up. But in these 4 starts, he had a 10.06 ERA. And if you look at his fastball, it's still moving kind of the same. So what's the difference then, guys? Well, what do you know? If you look at his changeup, there's a drop in vertical movement. And look at these other stats. His changeup in this span compared to the rest of 2019, it had a lower whiff rate, it gave up way more line drives, and his ground ball rate dropped too on the pitch. And, well, batters just hit it better too, with a higher batting average and a higher slugging percentage. So clearly, Chris Paddack's changeup, as elite as it can be, that's the big word, can. There's also times when it's not that good. And in this case, I think what's going on is that his changeup isn't dropping as much in the zone. Because it doesn't move as much, it's easier to hit or maybe easier to lay off of. But that leaves the question, what happened in 2020? His changeup got even more flat. It didn't move nearly as much vertically. So shouldn't he have done worse with the pitch? Because hitters still seem to struggle with his changeup in 2020. And I think that's where this whole story comes together. I personally think that yes, his fastball changed, the movement on it changed in 2020. And hitters realized that it was hittable. For one reason or another, this 2-seam spin, this 2-seam movement made the pitch more hittable. And I think once hitters realized that, they started sitting on it. If you watch the Cardinals game, I'm telling you, they just sit fastball and just drill the fastball. And clearly, when you're sitting fastball, you can look silly on the changeup. And so yes, I do think that Paddack's fastball is a big cause for concern. And if he is able to fix it, that he should be able to improve. But I also think there's a lot of room to be concerned about his changeup, especially given last season. And if his changeup isn't as good as it was in his rookie season, again, he's primarily a 2-pitch pitcher. And no matter how good his fastball is, he's not throwing that thing 110 miles per hour. They're going to be able to hit it at some point. And that's what nobody's telling you about Chris Paddack. Leave a comment below on what you think about Chris Paddack, and I don't know, who would you like to see in that number 5 spot in the rotation? Mackenzie Gore, Ryan Weathers, Chris Paddack, you name it.